And that's all the news this hour. Join us again at the top of the hour for 10 o'clock for another bulletin. Thank you very much for staying with us. We now continue with the discussion we were having with NBAD governance advocate Hassan Soweto regarding the response from the Nigerian government to the protesters who have been detained and exactly the state of those who are in custody right now. Hassan Soweto, it's good to have you still here with us. Thank you very much for staying.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Now, you mentioned the number of people who are being detained across Nigeria. You also mentioned the state of some of the heads of these groups that have been arrested or were arrested earlier in the month. Now, could you also please tell us exactly whether they are being represented adequately? Because that's a big topic, especially on today's show. Who's representing them and how is that going so far?
Well, in a number of states where we have been able to reach, the arrested protesters, there is the efficient legal representation. I mean, for instance, with regards to the 124 protesters detained at the IRT in Abuja, we have the, very effective legal representation, by Mr. Femi Falana SA head, Olumide Physical SA head, as well as, about 10 to 15 other lawyers. Equally in Kaduna, we also have Mr. Pascal, a very brilliant lawyer who is providing legal representation for 28 protesters who are currently in detention right now, as well as the likes of Khalid Aminu and others who are in DSS detention in Kaduna. In Kano and several other places, we also have such representation. The Nigerian Bar Association has been very good. They've got a legal team which is providing pro bono legal services for protesters across the country. And a number of non-governmental organizations and are equally trying to see what role they can play. So, but the challenge has been the ability to be able to reach some of these protesters. Because in a number of places, you have either the DSS or the police preventing lawyers from being able to assess the numbers of those who are actually detained, as well as their identity. I mean, for instance, now, the DSS dungeon in Kaduna State, we only have, we have details that about 7 protesters may be held there. But the only person that we know for sure in terms of his identity is Khalid Aminu. But when Khalid Aminu was arrested, he was arrested in a group of about 7 people. And the DSS Director General in Kaduna State has prevented a lawyer from being able to even assess Khalid Aminu in order to be able to ascertain whether he's alone or with people. So in this sense, these are the kind of challenges that lawyers are facing. Something which shows that not only did the state decide to arrest protesters, they are also effectively trying to prevent legal representation from getting to protesters. Something which again raises the fact that the conduct of the Nigerian government as well as security agencies actually needs to be seriously questioned right now. In fact, what we are calling for now, we have to make appeal to media executives, to professional organizations, trade unions and that what we actually need right now is a public probe panel which can actually investigate the conduct of this government and security agencies. Because if you are not careful, what we are seeing over the past few weeks, these crimes against the Nigerian people, if you allow it to go unchallenged, then it's going to form a very terrible precedent. But don't forget that, yes, Nigeria has gone through this kind of history before under the dark days of military. But you could explain that away to say that, yes, when you have military rule, those kind of violations of citizens' rights, are expected. But this time around, you are talking about a civilian rule. You are talking about a democracy that is at least 24 years old. And yet, the recognition and respect of the basic liberties of Nigerian citizens, is not even accepted. There are ways that even detainees have to be treated when you arrest people. Because the only difference with security agencies and kidnappers is that security agencies they act under, the orders, of the state. But right now, what we have is a situation whereby security agencies are are conducting themselves in exactly the same manner as kidnappers. But when you arrest people from their home at 2 a.m. in the morning.
Might
Yes.
I ask you, as you're talking about liberties and free will and the right to association as regards to the protests, past and present. Let's talk about the future. Do you see a future of Nigeria, or Nigeria in the future, where protesters can protest, or Nigerians can go out on the street and protest to their own free will and will never be intimidated?
I don't see that in the coming period.
Why?
And that's why it's important. Yeah, because, I mean, this is the first 15 months of this government, and it has already, demonstrated clearly that it is not prepared to recognize the right of the average Nigerian citizen to freedom of expression and association and assembly. So that in a way already sets the tone for what we are going to experience for the next 4 years or thereabout. And that is why it is important, that we don't allow this to go unchallenged. Don't forget right now that there are court orders in a number of states, in Lagos State, which permanently restrict protests to certain places. In fact, our lawyers have just discovered that that order was obtained in a very, very illegal manner. It's not even done properly according to the proper procedures of things. But yet, you had a court, grant that, something which also tells you the state of Nigeria's judiciary. So right now, the media is being, assaulted. The judiciary is kept in the pocket of the executive. What are you going to have as a product of that? What you are going to have really is a society where citizens are just slaves. So that in the coming period, as we say, we want to organize a protest, many people are going to be afraid of coming out, given what we have experienced over the past 10 days. And that's why it is important, that we continue to insist that the right of Nigerians to freely express themselves, to freely organize and assemble, to express themselves against any government policies must be respected. We need to have a situation whereby the Nigerian government, as well as any officials of the state who are directly connected to these violations of people's rights, are reported to the appropriate international bodies, and appropriate disciplines, are equally, provided for them. I mean, because without doing this, we are going to form a precedent that means that, the state will continue to ride roughshod on the rights of Nigerian people.
So might I ask, right, given the history of protests in Nigeria and strike actions and the outcomes of it, do you think, let me ask about this hashtag End Bad Governance protest to begin with. Was there any result at the end? And giving also from hashtag End SARS protest as well, we saw the outcome of that. Should Nigerians go back on the street to protest? Should protest be a commonplace? Should it be a means to an end in terms of change for Nigeria? What do you think? What do you think should be?
Well, what I would say is this. I always like to use the example of a slave in captivity to describe what is happening to us in Nigeria today. A slave in captivity is in chains. The chain itself is very painful. The process of breaking free from the chain is equally painful. So in that situation, therefore, the slave has to choose between two levels of pain, two forms of pain, and which one he has to go through. And oftentimes, a slave will realize that pain of breaking free from the chain, he has to go through that, because it is only that offers any glimmer of hope at all. I think that is the situation that we are in Nigeria today. The pain of trying to break through from our chain is enormous, and oftentimes our struggle appears not to achieve their immediate ends. Yes, look at EndSARS 4 years ago. You would think that, with the way that struggle unfolded and the intensity to have police brutality again. But yet, we continue to have it, even in this last protest. Look at all of the demands of our protest. After the protest, what has happened? In fact, in a way, economically, we're in a worse situation that we were in even before the protest. Look at the fuel queues across the country. Nigeria is shutting down before our very eyes. We're buying fuel for 900 naira and 1,000 naira since the protest. But these are additional reasons why we have to prepare to go on the street again.
Okay,
but what all of this show really is that we need to put our hands the capitalist system that is behind all of this crisis.
All right, so with everything that you've mentioned, this is a very big deal. I mean, especially pulling the conversation back to the detention of these heads of the groups that were protesting, especially Lenin. Now, is it too soon to actually inquire whether it has garnered or drawn international attention from groups or advocacy groups, Amnesty, for instance? Is there international attention currently, or are you expecting that this will happen soon? Is it time?
Yeah, there is a number of solidarity that we have had internationally, and it's growing. Yes, Amnesty International, but also socialist groups, trade unions, in Europe are also planning to take actions. Over the past 2 weeks, we had a number of demos at Nigerian embassies in a number of countries over this. And the Nigerian diaspora, we are equally reaching out to them because right now, it is very important to ensure that the diaspora is involved in what is happening. And they are also going to take their own actions over the coming period to demonstrate that they stand with the Nigerian people. So it will keep on growing. And you have seen what is happening with the Nigerian Labour Congress leadership and how that has also attracted the attention of the international labor movement. So that we are going to get to a point whereby both at home and abroad, the Nigerian government and its officials, will not find any resting place if they continue, to attack the right of the Nigerian people.
And do you think that when this international attention comes forth, do you think perhaps that is when the Nigerian government will take better action regarding these detained few?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we have seen it happen that when the struggle receives an international attention, and everywhere they go to, they are being challenged, that sometimes that can, force the government to want to amend its ways. We have seen that in the past. So we expect that if it gets to that stage, then we can see some changes. But we will also not be surprised if we are dealing with a government that is impervious, to reason at any level. And if that comes to that, then the Nigerian people would have to decide on what is best for them going forward.
Then finally, on that line of questioning, regarding the supporters from outside of the country, the advocates from outside of the country, have they shown interest in these detained many who are currently in detention? What have they done? From before the protests, we could see exactly what they were doing, how they helped, how they pushed. What about now? Are they also helping in these cases?
Well, what I've said before, it's about the political actions that advocates across the world, including unions, including socialist groups, have taken and they are prepared to take in the coming period, depending on how the situation develops. It will not be possible for me to reveal all details, knowing the situation, but obviously, it's going to happen that at some point, we are going to have, Nigerian people in the diaspora, but also unions across the world taking actions across the world to demonstrate to the Nigerian government that the world will not sit idly by why the right of the Nigerian citizens, are being trampled upon, that they are not going to sit idly by when, protesters or protest organizers will be thrown in jail over so-called terrorism charges, whereas the real reason why they are thrown in jail is because the government does not like, the message they are making, the message about the need, to change all of the economic policies that have kept people in a situation of poverty and hunger. So this would happen, and it continues to grow. It also depends on the dynamics of our own struggle here, if you're able to go back to the street and all of that. But definitely this struggle has enjoyed and will continue to enjoy international solidarity from all corners of the world. We will continue to use every platform, to expose the crime that the Nigerian government, is committing against the Nigerian people. And very soon, the Nigerian government and its officials will realize that anywhere they go to, people will challenge them. At conferences, at meetings internationally, people will ask them, what is happening back home in your country? That is where we need to get to, and we will get there.
Speaking of crimes, I have to ask about the incarcerated protesters. Have they had their day in court? What is the latest with them?
No, they haven't, and that's a challenge. Last week, the Nigerian government, the police and the Attorney General refused to bring them to court, but they approached the court to get 60 days additional days of remand. But what has happened now is that our lawyers are challenging that, and hopefully we hope that by next week, we'll be able to know when that suit will be had, and then what is going to be possible. But alongside with the legal challenge, of the 60 days remand, is also the need for us to keep up, the political passion, the political campaign, so that everywhere across the country, the urban governance movement and the groups associated with it are going to be meeting, to discuss what can also be done. But what Nigerians should know is that very soon we are going to be back on the street again, both to fight for the release of our incarcerated colleagues, but also to continue to fight for all of the demands that we have been making since early this month, which the government has ignored. Fuel price, energy prices, the cost of living, lack of employment, the high cost of education, and the complete miserable situation that many, Nigerians are in, especially young people, because, of the way the country is. These are the issues that led us to go to the street earlier on, and these are the issues that would make us to go back again because they remain unresolved. The government has ignored it. The president keeps on jumping across the globe, why the people suffer. Don't forget that even while we were having the protest, that was when the government was making, ready the new presidential jet, as well as a new, more, luxurious vehicle for the president. So
Right.
if they really were interested in our issues,
Okay, then.
they would not be doing that. Yeah.
All right. Well, Hassan Soweto, you have been quite the guest this morning. We appreciate you for your insights and also just giving us update on the incarcerated leaders there for the hashtag End Bad Governance protests. And we'll continue to follow up on this story as it continues to develop and unfold. Once again, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.